everyone, this is Payanna and welcome to my book club. And in this video I'm going to be talking about my favourite books that I read in 2020. Just to be clear, these are books that I read in 2020, not necessarily books that were released in 2020. Yeah. So without further ado, let's get started. When lockdown started, there was a book on my bedside table that had been there for about 3 months, and I thought, I'm going to read that one, just to see what it's like. It was the beginning of a love story that I haven't known any equivalent to since Harry Potter. If you've been on this channel before, you probably have seen my videos about this series because they get way more views than all my other videos for some reason. I am of course talking about the Temeraire series by Naomi Novik. So over the course of the year I got through 7 of these books. There are 9 in total. I have 2 more to go. And then oh my god, I love it so much. This is the story of Lawrence, who is a British Navy captain during the Napoleonic Wars, and he comes across a French ship which he captures, and on that French ship there is a dragon egg, and he ends up being the captain of this dragon that he calls Temeraire. This is alternative history, basically imagining what the world would have been like had there been dragons when the Napoleonic Wars were going on, and these dragons are utilised in war. And Temeraire and Lawrence are just such brilliant characters. And Lawrence has a very kind of fixed idea, he's a very moral character, and Temeraire is incredibly intelligent, incredibly logical. He has this kind of very peculiar sense of logic, which I find very, very pleasing. And Naomi Novik creates this entire world. Like, they travel a lot, they go all over the world, they look at all different countries, they go to Africa, they go to China, they go to South America, they find out how dragons live all over the world and how they are used and how they're integrated in society. It is a brilliant, brilliant series, and I cannot recommend it enough. The second one is Matched by Ali Condie. Now, I was really surprised. I picked this book up in a charity shop, and I was really surprised by how good it was. I wasn't expecting anything like this. I was expecting just some random YA love story, which is what this is, by the way. But it's a dystopian future where the people live in the society, this thing known as the society, and the society controls every single thing about their lives, how much they eat, how much they exercise, what they go to school, where they study, what job they have, and who they get married to. So the main character, whose name is, I can't remember right now, what's her name? I can't even remember. Cassia. Yes, Cassia. She is going to her matching ceremony, hoping that she's going to be matched with her best friend Xander. Only she is matched with Xander, but she's also matched with someone else, a boy called Kai, who is an abomination, like a criminal, someone who doesn't kind of fit in with the society's standards of living. I've just started leafing through book 2, which seems like a very interesting sequel. I promised I'd get round to that before the end of the year. I didn't. I'm sorry, things happened. But yeah, this was a very, very pleasant surprise for me, because it doesn't, like, usually when, like, all the dystopian novels that I've read, they start with a character who is already angry against the system that they live in, against this dictatorial dystopian society. However, Cassia simply isn't. She completely goes along with it and tries to be a model citizen, and still, until circumstances lead her to understand that this might not be the best way of doing things, and the society may be lying to them, and she decides to become a rebel and take a stand against it. So I really liked the fact that she goes through this evolution all the way through the book to end up being the rebel and sort of have that spark of rebellion and the strength to stand up against the society. The Arc of a Scythe by Neal this was just blew my mind. It was so good. this man has brought the art of foreshadowing to like the ultimate level. It is so good. This is a utopian future where everything, like all diseases have been eradicated, including death. So there's no more natural death. People are just simply brought back in revival centres. However, people still need to die because there are still people being born. So there are these people known as Scythes whose job it is to basically regulate the population. And the first novel follows the story of two Scythes apprentices. And what's great about this is you really get a different facet of the society in every novel. So it starts off with the Scythes and how they work. The second book is about the Thunderhead, which is the AI which basically looks after everyone. It is the kind of mother/father figure to everyone on the earth. It deals and cares for all of them. So the second book is more about that. And the third book, you have this religious group known as Tonists, and they are vaguely mentioned. They vaguely appear in book 1 and 2, but in book 3 they really become a very important group, and it follows the story of their leader, who in book 3 is the only person who can talk to the Thunderhead after the Thunderhead decides to cut contact with everyone. And the progression where this book ends up taking you is so good, and this actually got me to do something which I don't think I've ever done before, which is to read 2 novels in a series, one directly after the other. Like even the Temeraire series, which I love to bits, I didn't read one book one after the other. I read a couple of books in between them, but when I got to the end of Thunderhead, I was like, okay, it is such a cliffhanger. I was like, okay, I've got to read the Toll. I've got to read the Toll now. I can't wait. So I'm very grateful to have waited till all 3 books in this trilogy were released before I bought them, because otherwise I don't know what would have happened to my mental health, to be honest. Neal Schusterman, he is that good. I was also interested in the fact that he had decided to portray a utopia, because obviously writing about dystopias, I think it's probably more obvious, like with Ali Condie and Matched. But writing a utopia, he really did think, well, what could be the perfect world? How could it be? And it really is a perfect world. And again, the thing that makes it go wrong are people who are power hungry. But strongly recommend this trilogy. It's very, very good, very intense, and just the cliffhangers, the foreshadowing, everything's brilliant. The Wise Man's Fear by Patrick Rothfuss. Now, The Name of the Wind, which is the first book in the Kingkiller Chronicles, is probably one of my favourite books in the world. So obviously I was really excited about this one. For some reason it took me this long to get around to it. I don't know. I think I was also kind of waiting for book 3, but these are big boys. Like, these novels, I think this one's over 1,000 pages. It takes time, so I'm just going to have to wait for that one and be frustrated, and I'm just going to have to learn to deal with that. But in the first book we get to follow Quoth's story about how he loses his family to these kind of mythical warriors, how he goes to university to learn magic despite the fact he is poor and can't pay the fees, and how he has to deal with that, and his relationship with Dana. And in book 2, he leaves the city and the university and goes to become a bard for a lord, because he's also a musician, and he plays the lute, and he needs a patron so that he can obviously live and fulfill his art. And in book 2 he finally gets one, only he has to travel a long way. And this lord wants him to basically help him to seduce a young lady. So he gets involved in court life, and being like he knows nothing about this, he has to deal with that. And then he gets sent on a mission to try and find some villains who've been like highwaymen who've been holding up the lord's caravans. How can you call them? Commercial route, I guess. Yeah, just been wreaking havoc on the commercial route, And Quoth, with his magic, he is assigned a group of people and he has to go and sort that out. And then he learns a lot of stuff on the way, and he meets Felurian, a mythical woman, a mythical kind of fairy, magical creature who tricks men into falling in love with her and then drains them of their life force. So much happens, and it's still wonderful. And what I love about this, apart from just the multi-layered world that Patrick Rothfuss has created, is just Quoth as a character is quite interesting, because this is him telling his story. So we have scenes of him, like as he's telling his story, where he later on in life he's become the owner of a tavern, so he's an innkeeper now, and he doesn't really do magic anymore. And he's telling his story to chronicler. There's a side to him that is very modest, where he will say things like, oh yeah, well, that great story that people tell about me, that was circumstantial and it wasn't as great as people make it out to be, because he is the greatest wizard in the world and everybody knows of him, everybody knows he's a legend. But he plays that side down a lot. But there are other aspects of his personality and his behaviour that he really does put forward. He knows how good he is. Especially when he's comparing himself to the young lords from the university, the ones who are at the Wizard University because they have... because their families have money, even though they don't necessarily have any talent for magic. He knows how good he is and how clever he is, like how he makes up these grand schemes to trick his enemy into doing something or stealing something from him. It's very, very intricate, very, very precise, described in a very precise way. Really, really brilliant fantasy novels, 2 novels, The Wiseman's Sphere, and the first novel is The Name of the Winds. Truly, truly magnificent. The Day of the Triffids by John Wyndham. This is a classic sci-fi novel from the 1950... When was this published? First published in 1951. Yeah, that's right. So, yeah, classic science fiction. I was quite surprised how well this stood up today. Like, obviously, when you're reading it, you need to bear in mind that this was released in the 1950s, but still, you know, just putting this in a modern context really, really works well. It is really well written, and just the idea behind it I thought was very, very good. Bill wakes up in hospital one morning to find that pretty much the entire world has gone blind because of a cosmic event that happened during the night, and they need to live with this new set of circumstances. So you've got that side of it, the fact that now no one can see, and there are very, very few people who still can, including him. And then you've got the Triffids. So the Triffids are these plants that can actually walk and move around, and they can also attack people and kill people because they're carnivorous plants. And the brilliant thing about this is how progressive it is, like how the Triffids just started appearing in people's gardens and no one really took any notice of them, and then one day one of them got up and started walking, and Bill actually studied the Triffids because they produced plant oil, and he believed that they could even talk to each other. They have these sort of little sticks that they bang against their stems and they can talk to each other. And the thing is, now everyone is blind, they can't hide from the Triffids anymore, so the Triffids essentially start taking over, and it's like really, really great. Just the imagination behind it, and how you know, this is completely possible. If tomorrow everyone goes blind, what do we do? There's going to be a bunch of problems that probably no one has thought of, and it's interesting, especially given what happened this year. I thought this was a very pertinent novel given recent circumstances, so I would really recommend this. The Day of the Triffids by John Wyndham. I was pleasantly surprised. The Cemetery by Gerard Guix. Now, I have no idea if this novel is available in English or not. I live in France, and the French are a lot more open, as it were, to translating foreign literature. So this was written by a Catalan author, and yeah, I don't know. I hope that it gets published in English one day. It's really not a long novel. It's about 100 pages, 200 pages long, and it's also dystopian, because that seems to be a theme at the moment. But yeah, this is a dystopian novel. I found it very pleasing. It is entirely told from the point of view of one character who is trying to bury her mother in an actual graveyard, which is illegal in this futuristic dystopian world. She is not allowed, you can't bury people in the ground because there's no more room. And she goes to this ornamental cemetery, which is there for commemoration purposes. So it is an actual cemetery, but it's very, very old, and you can't bury your loved ones in there anymore. And she negotiates with the man who works there to try and get her mother buried. Every single scene is told from this character's point of view, and also inside the cemetery. Like, you never get to see any of the world that she lives in. You never get to see any of the other people. It is just her and the man who works, the man who kind of, tends the graveyard. And that's it. I thought it was very clever. Just to get such a very specific part of this world, but the descriptions of all the rest of it are very vivid. They are very subtle, but they are very vivid. So yeah, an interesting novel from a Catalan author, and I have no idea if it exists in English or not, but that was The Cemetery by Gerard Guix. Zadig by Voltaire. I know this book says Condie, but there are actually 3 stories in it, and Zadig is one of them. So over this whole book, I want to talk about Zadig. I didn't read a lot of classics this year. I don't know, I just didn't feel like it. I normally try and read classics because I think it's really important. But I did want to read some Voltaire again, and I picked this up in a charity shop, and it is beautiful. Look at this. This is a 1970s hardcover edition with this lovely gold artwork going on, I guess. And it's got 3 stories by Voltaire in it: Zadig, Candide and L'Ingénu. And it is also got some really beautiful illustrations in it. So I'm really, really pleased to own this book. I'm trying to find some of the illustrations. I can't seem to right now. Where are you? Where are you? Yeah, there's one. So, if you've never read Voltaire, you are seriously missing out on something. His stories are really, really good, and Zadig is one of my favourites. Zadig is a man who lives in the Middle East, and he's just an ordinary man. There's nothing special about him. And one day he's just going out for a walk, when he meets 2 palace guards who ask him if he has seen the Sultan's horse. And Zadig starts describing the horse. He says, oh yeah, it's a black horse. It is so high. It's got a shoe missing. It looks like this, it looks like that. And the guards are like, yeah, that's what the horse looks like. Have you seen it? And Zadig says no. But then he explains how he knows what the horse looks like, because he saw footprints on the floor. He saw that one of them didn't have a shoe on it. He found some fur on a branch, so he knows the colour of the horse and how high up the branch was. He knows how big the horse is. So he is an incredibly intelligent man who's able of deducing things, incredibly lucid. So the guards take him to the Sultan, and he becomes a consultant for the Sultan. However, this doesn't go as well as it could, because obviously the Sultan is thrilled to have a man who is so smart with him. However, Zadig is so smart that he's used as a diplomat, but he doesn't always go in the way that the Sultan wants him to go. So obviously this leads to conflict. I think he also has an affair with one of the concubines. But it is very interesting, because Zadig, the whole story is basically him being really smart and being appreciated for that, and then the smartness getting in the way, and then him being cast out and brought back and cast out again, as if there is no way of kind of being in a stable situation when you have a mind like his. And I think it's really interesting. So yeah, Voltaire's story as a general whole are really interesting. They really kind of explore certain facets of mankind, of psychology, of how people just work and relate to each other, and it is very relatable even today. So I strongly recommend Zadig and Condie, also brilliant story, and all of Voltaire's work. I love Voltaire. Read classics, really important. Les Aérostats by Amélie Nothomb. I wanted to incorporate this in my next French Book Week series. This is her latest novel, so it's probably not available in English yet, but it will be. Amélie Nothomb tends to get translated quite well. I was really, really pleased by this because, you know, I mean, she brings out a new novel every year and I always run out and buy them because I love her so much. But this one really felt like she was going back to what really makes up the bulk of her literature, because she, like Voltaire, also kind of explores psychology of people. Her novels are incredibly simple. Like, they usually are just two characters having a relationship or having a conversation. She really does just focus on exploring psychology, personalities, different facets of characters and how they relate to the world around them. So in this novel, the main character, whose name is... I am really not good at remembering names. Donate, I think her name is. No, Donate is the roommate. The main character's name is Ange. And Ange is employed by a man to teach his son how to read, because he needs to go through his baccalaureate, only he has trouble reading. So Ange's job is to get this boy to read, and that's it. Which isn't something that she has a lot of trouble doing, because she recommends that he read certain classics, and he does. And when she comes back, he gives her his feelings on them. However, this boy has a very strange relationship with his father, who listens in on their lessons. And this is something that Ange tries to persuade him not to do when she finds out, but he insists upon it. He's also very strict with his son. He really doesn't understand him. He really doesn't like him. He really doesn't try to. And this boy's mother is also incredibly weird. Like, she collects... Apparently she's supposed to collect pottery. However, what she collects are just pictures of vases and urns on the internet. It's very, very odd. So once again, Amélie Nothomb has... And oh yeah, and the brilliant thing about these characters is they just do not see how this is odd in any way. Like, yeah, that's just the way it is now. You know, we've got the internet, so we collect pictures of stuff instead of collecting the actual things. Amélie Nothomb is incredibly good at creating these kind of characters who just stand alone in one chapter. It is brilliant. So yeah, this is essentially Ange's relationship with her student, who she kind of coaches through reading different classics, and then, you know, tries, like, he learns a lot from these books, and not necessarily in a good way. It gets interesting. She also has quite an odd relationship with one of her teachers, who falls desperately in love with her. He's a much older man, because she's at university at the time. So yeah, one of her professors at university. So she has to deal with that. And Donate, the roommate, I was disappointed because I really liked Donate, and I felt that she wasn't explored enough in this book. That would really be the only point that I have to criticise about this. Donate is the first thing we see in this novel. She is the incredibly annoying roommate who's always complaining because, oh, the bathroom shower curtain has a wrinkle in it, or just ridiculous things like that. What did you do with my cucumber? Don't touch my cucumber. For eating purposes, don't take that out of its context. But anyway, so yeah, Donate. I wanted to learn more about Donate, but aside from that, I was very, very satisfied with Amélie Nothomb's new novel. Incredibly pleased. Brilliant. And finally, this year I really wanted to read more sci-fi. I read a ridiculous amount of fantasy, especially dragon-related fantasy, so it would seem but I really wanted to try and do more sci-fi, so I got hold of the Diabolic and the Empress, which are the first two novels in the Diabolic trilogy by S.J.Kincaid. Oh my god, I thought it was brilliant. I'm so pleased. I've got the third book, The Nemesis, waiting. This is so good. Like, S.J. Kincaid really did try and think of the worst possible case scenario and then made it happen. You are on your toes all the way through this novel. It's so good. It's told from the first person, from Nemesis's point of view. Nemesis is a diabolic. Diabolics are genetically engineered creatures who are essentially the perfect bodyguard. Only everything goes wrong for her. Her kind are to be destroyed by the Empire. However, her owner manages to hide her and pretend she's still alive. She then has to pose as her owner at the Emperor's court. Her owner gets killed, and she has to then basically take on her personality and her whole person, basically. And she also meets the Emperor's nephew, a boy called Tyrus, who is supposedly insane. However, he approaches her, asking for help. He is far from being insane. He's an incredibly lucid young man, and he wants to be emperor, not because he is power hungry, but because he believes in reinstating science to be taught throughout the empire, which is something that is incredibly frowned upon. Only it's causing a great amount of problems because all their spaceships are falling apart and they don't know how to fix them. So we've got a really interesting intrigue, multi-layered world with lots of different facets and intrigues, and again, wonderful politics and power play, because all this is going on at Emperor's court, and the religious influence, which is stopping everyone from learning about technology and science, which kind of mirrors certain pattern of thought which does exist in our society, unfortunately. And book two, like, oh my god, it goes in a completely different direction than what I expected. And like I say, everything that could possibly go wrong goes wrong. And it's quite pleasing to read something so, something that just keeps you on your toes all the way through. So I was very pleased with this. And on that note, I will be concluding that video, because these really were my favourite books of the year 2020. Because there were good things about it in amongst all the horror. Yeah, and on that note, I will say thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe, please leave a like, please leave a comment. I really enjoy doing this, and I hope to see you all soon. Bye bye.